I wanted to chat about a topic that has been really up for me, and seemingly all my friends that I talk to have been seeing it in the collective as well, about how sometimes it's not about doing the work. When you've done so much work and feel burned out from doing the inner work, sometimes what you need is actually just to either rest, take a break from what you're doing, or actually just learn to be okay with what's happening in your life. And I say that in the most loving way because I'm also talking to myself as someone who discovered self-help, self-growth, inner work, spirituality as a way to make myself better, to when it initially, and I've been on this path since I was 12 years old, so it's been a long time, and I feel like in the beginning, having not a whole lot of guidance, just being fueled by my perfectionism, people-pleasing tendencies, insecure attachment style, and just low self-worth, the self-work, the inner work was coming from a place of lack. It was coming from a place of wanting to be different than who I was. And maybe this is true for you too, that maybe in some degree that inner work has become a way for you to escape yourself. And I talk about this in my training, The 3 Secrets to Embodied Breakthroughs, that it's not really about becoming someone else. And unfortunately, the world of self-healing and inner work you can really easily get carried away with that intention, and come from a well-meaning place, but just kind of further the gap between where you are and where you want to be, when in reality, it's just about living as who you are and developing the capacity and the skills and the acceptance to be able to be with all of that. And I say that like it's easy, but obviously if it were easy, we would not be struggling so hard to do the opposite. And I'm just also in a place where I think that when you've done the work for such a long time and you have these thoughts of oh, you should be there by now, or this result should have happened, or this thing in my life should be different. And I think it's so easy to use inner work as an excuse to or as a almost power move. You feel like you're doing something. You feel like your ego feels like it's in control because you're changing, instead of changing to change your outer circumstances, you approach it by changing your inner circumstances, your inner world. But the whole thing with inner work burnout is I feel like you experience it because you are now nearing or at a place where you don't really need it anymore. You don't really need to constantly be bettering yourself, to be changing your thoughts, to be holding space for your feelings, diving into every pattern that you can think of. That self-awareness is beautiful, and it can also turn into hyper vigilance and self-criticism and judgment, expressed as the intention to just improve your life. And I get that, I really do. I think like we all do deserve to have the life that we want and the life that we dream of. But it's really hard to come into a place of secureness and wholeness and like all the things you've worked so hard to become when it's a constant excavation of yourself, when it's a constant just looking at yourself under a microscope and trying to create and enact change in your reality by hollowing yourself out. I feel like there is something fundamentally not right with that approach in terms of when it comes to manifestation. What I've been seeing is that I think inner work is really common amongst those of us who have learned, our nervous systems have learned to dissociate from our bodies to survive, and our bodies are the point in which we connect to this physical world. So when we dissociate, we withdraw from the physical, from the external, and we go inwards instead. And so when we're in that place, what feels powerful, what feels really alive for us and in our control is us. We can change ourselves. When we don't have control over the external circumstances, we can change ourselves, how we feel, how we think, what we do. We think we can mold ourselves into this version of ourselves that's gonna be the match for the reality that we want. And we can, of course, do that by all means. But I feel like there is this point where not a lot of people talk about, where it's just like, with all the work and all the healing, and you really are coming to a place of greater acceptance, it's like, why not just accept instead of trying to change? This is like the crux of, I feel like, a question that's been in the back of my mind for a while now. Like, at what point do we feel safe to let go of the need to change ourselves and have that as a tool and a skill that we can use when the situation requires that of us? But what I think is being shown to me is that that's not every situation. I used to think that it was, but it's actually a lot less needed than I initially was using it for. And I know that inner work has changed my life completely. There is so much that I owe to inner work and self-healing. Obviously, my work revolves around the world of self-healing, and I think like this aspect just isn't talked about very much or enough, that you have done enough work. You have done enough work, and even when it comes from the place of wanting to, or like knowing that you deserve better, it's still sometimes a good idea to just take a break, to just put some distance between you and like what needs to change or what you perceive needs to be different, and just allow yourself to live and enjoy your life as it is, because it's imperfect. It is a human experience that you're having, which is inherently flawed and beautiful in its own way. So when we can start to be more okay with that in our bodies and in our nervous systems, I think that's when we get to connect with more presence, more authenticity, and more purpose in a way that isn't driven by this old story of needing things to be different.